When a bride marries the eldest grandson of Queen Elizabeth, the world expects to see a piece of Windsor history. But as Harriet Sperling stepped into the pouring rain on her wedding day, the tiara she wore left royal experts completely baffled. It didn't belong to her mother-in-law, Princess Anne. It wasn't borrowed from the king's legendary vaults. Instead, it was an absolute mystery. Why bypass the royal collection entirely? And how does this seemingly unknown tiara hide a beautiful secret connection to two past coronations and the late queen herself? But the bride wasn't the only one making a statement. From a vintage hat that hasn't been seen since 1981 to a beautiful pearl bracelet carrying the poignant legacy of Princess Diana, the guests were speaking volumes without saying a word. Pour yourself a cup of tea and let's decode the hidden history, the surprising family tributes, and the quiet etiquette sparkling in the Cotswolds. Before we begin, please support my channel by clicking on the like and subscribe buttons. Thank you. On June 6, 2026, the quiet Gloucestershire village of Kemble became the center of the royal world. It was a typical British summer day, which, of course, meant the rain was coming down in absolute torrents. The wet asphalt reflected the church's tall spire, but the gloomy weather did nothing to quiet the cheers of the locals and well-wishers gathered behind metal barriers outside All Saints' Church. The local bell ringers filled the air with celebratory music, setting a joyful tone. As Peter Phillips, the eldest grandchild of the late Queen Elizabeth, arrived to greet the public with a beaming smile, you could really feel the excitement. He was about to marry Harriet Sperling, a dedicated NHS pediatric nurse, and there is always something wonderfully comforting about a country wedding, especially when the guest list includes the King and Queen and the Prince and Princess of Wales. The gray skies and wet Cotswold stone only made the moment more striking when the bridal car finally pulled up to the church. Stepping out into the drizzle, Harriet looked incredibly serene. She was accompanied by her three bridesmaids, her teenage daughter Georgina, and Peter's daughters Savannah and Isla. All three girls wore matching white designs with high necks, carefully helping to navigate the bride's delicate fabric through the rain. Seeing the girls working together to hold up the veil off the wet pavement was such a sweet, genuine family moment before the formal vows. For her gown, Harriet turned to a firm royal favorite, Amelia Wickstead. The designer spent months crafting a look that felt both traditional and completely modern. It was actually a highly clever three-part creation. Beneath a delicate lace overjacket with a high neck and long sleeves, she wore a sleek, square-necked Italian ivory crepe column dress. If you look closely at the lace, you can see intricate embroidery of wildflowers, a lovely, quiet nod to the local flora of the countryside where both Harriet and Peter grew up. To complete the look, she had a dramatic 3-meter scallop train sweeping gracefully behind her, which the designer based on a 19th century silhouette. The heavy lace and that high collar gave off very similar vibes to the famous Alexander McQueen dress worn by the Princess of Wales back in 2011. It is such an elegant, timeless style, and she wore it beautifully. But while her dress was a beautiful blend of classic bridal elements, it was the jewel shimmering in her hair that immediately caught my attention. Resting gently atop her neatly styled updo was a delicate, sparkling diamond and pearl tiara that left royal jewelry watchers completely puzzled. This was not the famous festoon tiara, nor was it any of the other familiar heirlooms we are used to seeing in Princess Anne's branch of the family. The delicate swags of diamonds and the geometric pattern were entirely new to us. Where did a completely unknown, yet clearly historical tiara come from on such a prominent royal wedding day? We will uncover the surprising origins of this piece in just a moment, but first, we need to understand why she made this unexpected choice. Why would a bride marrying into this family choose to bypass the legendary royal vaults entirely? To understand why Harriet walked down the aisle with a borrowed piece, we have to look closely at the choices surrounding the family's personal jewelry. Peter's mother, Princess Anne, owns the beautiful festoon tiara, which was worn by Peter's first wife Autumn during their wedding in 2008. While there is certainly no official rule or protocol forbidding a second wife from wearing the same family tiara, Harriet's decision to avoid it feels incredibly appropriate. A wedding is a deeply personal milestone, and it is entirely natural for a bride to want her own distinct identity on her special day, free from any direct comparisons to a previous marriage. Stepping away from the festoon tiara allowed Harriet to create a unique memory. Interestingly, the Pragnel tiara she eventually chose actually bears a strong visual resemblance to Princess Andrew's meander tiara, specifically the way the Princess Royal wore it in her official 50th birthday portrait in 2000. It is a wonderful visual connection, but it still leaves us with the main question. Beyond the tiara, I have noticed quite a few spirited debates online regarding Harriet's overall wedding attire, particularly her choice of a white gown and a face veil. It is indeed a complex question with no easy answer. On one hand, many of us are accustomed to more restrained, understated choices for second weddings. We only have to look at Princess Anne's own second wedding to Sir Timothy Lawrence in 1992, where she chose a simple, short white outfit and a small flower headpiece instead of a traditional veil or tiara. Similarly, Queen Camilla opted for elegant, colorful daywear rather than a tiara for her blessing in 2005. I can completely understand why many observers feel that a quieter, more subdued approach is the most fitting way to mark a second union. On the other hand, times are changing, and a wedding is, after all, a new beginning. Should we really hold modern brides to such rigid, outdated constraints on a day meant to celebrate love and hope? A premier example of this shift is Meghan Markle's wedding in 2018. As a divorcee, she wore a pristine white gown and a borrowed family heirloom, Queen Mary's diamond bandeau. That wedding became a key milestone, showing just how much modern royal guidelines have evolved compared to the strict mid-20th century conventions. Ultimately, I can see the merit in both sides of this discussion, and I certainly wouldn't want to judge. Personally, I thought Harriet's overall look was lovely and very classic. Avoiding the festoon tiara makes perfect sense, but Princess Anne does have other tiaras in her collection. Let's take a look at what else might have been available. Princess Anne's personal jewelry collection is not the most extensive in the royal family, but it is certainly filled with character. If we set aside the festoon tiara, the next piece that comes to mind is her aquamarine pine flower tiara. It is a piece that certainly makes a statement, but it is not exactly what most people envision for a bridal headpiece. The design features prominent aquamarines set among geometric diamond elements that are styled to look like pine cones. The result is a very specific, almost spiky silhouette that many find a bit controversial when discussing classic wedding looks. I completely understand why it was left safely in its case for this particular occasion. Some jewelry pairings, however, feel so incredibly natural that you can't help but wonder what could have been. Princess Anne owns another piece that, in my view, could have been a perfect choice with Harriet's dress: the meander tiara. This is a piece with deep, sentimental roots on the groom's side of the family, having originally belonged to Peter's great-grandmother, Princess Alice of Greece. Princess Alice gave it to the future Queen Elizabeth II as a wedding gift in 1947. The Queen later passed it down to her daughter, Princess Anne, and it holds a very special place in the family's romantic history. It was the very tiara Peter's sister Zara chose for her own wedding day. It is a piece that speaks of history and restraint. With its strict classical lines and diamond Greek key motifs, the meander tiara offers a wonderful, clean geometry. I honestly think it would have been a spectacular pairing. The crispness of the diamonds would have beautifully balanced the square neckline of the crepe underdress and perfectly anchored that traditional veil without overwhelming the bride's face. What makes this particular missed opportunity so fascinating to me is that the tiara Harriet ultimately did wear features a very prominent diamond Greek key motif in its upper band. The design language of the meander was clearly something she was drawn to, and it suited her perfectly. Why, then, did Harriet choose to borrow a piece from an outside jeweler when Princess Anne had a seemingly perfect Greek meander right there in her collection? The answer brings us to a compelling mix of modern pragmatism and an unexpected historical detective story. The tiara that arrived in Kemble that morning carries a remarkable past, linking this quiet country wedding all the way back to the coronations of King George VI and Queen Elizabeth II. let's unravel this secret together. Did you know that the piece that arrived in Kemble that morning belongs to a sixth-generation British family? The Pragnel tiara dates back to the late Edwardian period, and it is a breathtaking example of what happens when two distinct design eras collide. When you study the framework of this piece, you see a dazzling design that is typical of both the Edwardian and Art Deco periods, something that is actually very rare to find successfully executed in a single piece of jewelry. When you study the framework of this piece, you see a dazzling design that is typical of both the Edwardian and Art Deco periods, something that is actually very rare to find successfully executed in a single piece of jewelry. The upper structure features a rigid, geometric row of diamond Greek keys, completely characteristic of the Art Deco movement. Suspended downward from this strict upper band are delicate, romantic swags of diamonds, forming glittering laurel leaves and articulated floral motifs. The entire piece is then topped with elegant pearls resting just above small diamond bows. The softness of the Edwardian festoons hanging from the strictness of the meander pattern shouldn't work on paper, yet it is absolutely stunning in person. While it has never belonged to the royal family, this tiara has witnessed royal history from the very front row. Let's look back for a moment to 1937. As King George VI, Peter's great-grandfather, took his oaths in the solemn, heavy atmosphere of Westminster Abbey, this very tiara was there, sparkling among the gathered peers and guests. Worn by generations of the Pragnel family, it made another glittering appearance in the Abbey 16 years later, in 1953, for the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II. Knowing that it shared the room with such monumental moments adds a wonderful layer of gravity to the piece, making it far more than just a borrowed accessory. But the historical thread connecting this tiara to the Windsors goes even deeper, hidden within the archives of the jewelers themselves. The House of Pragnel acquired the prestigious jewelry firm Philip Antrobus. If that name sounds familiar, it is because Philip Antrobus was the jeweler who, back in 1947, took diamonds provided by Prince Philip and crafted Queen Elizabeth II's famous three-stone engagement ring, as well as her exquisite platinum and diamond wedding gift bracelet. When Peter Phillips proposed to Harriet, he also turned to Pragnel. He offered her a stunning three-stone diamond engagement ring that bears a very deliberate resemblance to the one his grandfather gave to his grandmother almost 80 years ago. For her wedding day, Harriet paired the Pragnel tiara with pearl and diamond earrings from the same jeweler, perfectly coordinating with her ring. I don't know if it was intentional or just a beautiful, happy coincidence, but I see this choice as a quiet way to honor the late Queen's memory without taking a single stone from the Windsor vault. It feels like a very thoughtful tribute. But among royal jewelry watchers, another, much more grounded theory has been making the rounds regarding this particular loan. We know that Peter Phillips has a very sharp business mind and a long history in sports management and marketing. In jewelry circles, it has been noted that borrowing a tiara from an independent, family-run business provides massive, global exposure for the jeweler. It is highly likely that wearing the Pragnel tiara was part of a mutually beneficial arrangement, a brilliant bit of PR for the heritage brand in exchange for the loan of the tiara, and perhaps a favorable arrangement for the engagement ring and earrings. Pragmatic? Absolutely. But in our modern world, even royal-adjacent weddings sometimes benefit from a little clever marketing. Or perhaps Harriet simply wanted a completely fresh start, choosing a beautiful piece that carried no prior emotional ties to her new husband's family. Whatever the true reason behind the scenes, the outcome gave us the chance to admire a rarely seen historic tiara in the spotlight, something we jewelry enthusiasts can certainly appreciate. Setting aside the business of it all, the wedding was, at its heart, a family gathering. And speaking of family, the guest list brought out some truly fascinating sartorial choices, particularly from the groom's side. Let's start by looking at how the mother of the groom, Princess Anne, decided to turn up for her son's big day. It is always fascinating to see how the mother of the groom approaches a wedding day. Princess Anne arrived at the church perfectly prepared for the damp, unexpectedly cold June weather. She wore a bright yellow jacket layered over a patterned dress, wrapped comfortably in a pashmina, and finished the look with dark gloves, a signature touch of her traditional formality. The most remarkable part of her ensemble wasn't a famous designer label, but rather the astonishing history of the garments themselves. Word among royal fashion sleuths is that the patterned dress she wore might actually date back as far as 1986. But even that is outdone by her headpiece. The yellow, wide-brimmed hat made its debut an incredible 45 years ago. Looking at the slightly aged texture of the straw, it takes you right back to the summer of 1981. The last time this hat was at the center of a major family gathering, a young Princess Anne was holding baby Zara at her christening. Now, decades later, she is wearing it to celebrate her eldest son's wedding. Her ability to keep clothes in such pristine condition for almost half a century is a level of sustainable fashion that always commands my deepest respect. Her jewelry was equally understated and deeply personal. She chose a pair of classic pearl drop earrings and a 3-row necklace of small pearls. This combination is virtually her uniform for daytime family occasions. Instead of hiding the clasp at the back of her neck, Princess Anne wore it right at the front. While Princess Anne's approach to her jewelry box is driven entirely by pragmatism, Queen Camilla opted for a classic, polished look for the occasion. She chose a buttercream yellow coat and dress, featuring a really charming scallop detailing along the edges. It is a tested and true silhouette for her, and the soft pastel tone felt perfectly pitched for a June wedding. For her jewelry, she selected a diamond and gold pair of earrings that we have actually seen on a much larger stage. These are the exact same earrings she wore for her coronation at Westminster Abbey in 2023. I always enjoy seeing pieces from major state events being worn again for family celebrations. It is a nice, practical way to reuse something so special. To complement the earrings, she wore 2 diamond Cosmos brooches by the French jewelry house Van Cleef & Arpels. What makes this pairing visually interesting is that she pinned them side by side, but they are not identical. One blossom is set in white gold, and the other in yellow gold. Mixing metals can sometimes be a bit tricky, but here, the combination works really well against the pale yellow fabric of her coat, adding just the right amount of sparkle in the gloomy weather. The wedding in Kemble was actually just the first part of a very busy day for the couple. Immediately following the ceremony, the King and Queen stepped into a helicopter for a 100-mile trip from Gloucestershire to Surrey, heading to the Epsom Derby to present the winner's trophy. The Princess of Wales chose a very soft, muted look for the day. She arrived in a blush pink boucle dress by Roland Mouret, paired with a matching boater hat by Jane Taylor. It is a nice, quiet choice. Exactly what you want to wear when you want to look put together, but have absolutely no intention of pulling focus from the bride. If we zoom in closely on her right wrist, we can see the piece that brings so much history to her outfit. A beautiful 3-row pearl bracelet with diamond and pearl spacers. This bracelet was originally designed by Nigel Milne back in 1988 as part of a collection to support the Birthright charity. Princess Diana, who was the charity's patron, wore it on several occasions, perhaps most famously alongside her iconic pearl-encrusted Catherine Walker Elvis dress during a visit to Hong Kong in 1989. Catherine has worn it a few times over the years, including a trip to Berlin and the G7 summit, and it is always lovely to see Diana's pearls continuing to be worn and enjoyed at family gatherings. Lifting our gaze from the pearls, Catherine's earrings also carry a sweet personal connection. She opted for a pair of diamond and pale pink morganite drop earrings by Kiki McDonough. If they look familiar, it is because she wore these exact earrings to her sister Pippa's wedding in the spring of 2017. I always enjoy seeing her rewear pieces tied to happy family memories. It feels like a very natural and personal way to mark a celebration. While Catherine embraced soft, dusty pinks, Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, decided to bring a cheerful splash of color to the gloomy afternoon. She looked incredibly fresh in a light blue dress designed by Beulah London. To tie the look together, she reached for a set of floral earrings and a matching pendant, both featuring bright blue gemstones ringed with small diamonds. But the detail that really caught people's attention was her choice of handbag. Instead of a traditional, structured formal clutch, Sophie carried a woven, turquoise basket-style bag from the designer Sophie Habsburg. It is a very original, relaxed design, bringing a bit of breezy summer energy to the rather chilly, rainy churchyard. Speaking of blue, Sophie wasn't the only guest who embraced the color that afternoon. Peter's sister, Zara Tyndall, arrived in a gorgeous periwinkle blue crepe dress by Rebecca Valance. If the puff sleeve design looks familiar, you have a great memory. She actually wore this exact dress to a charity dinner just last October. She paired it with a lovely pair of silver floral stud earrings featuring blue drops by Hector Lyon Jewelry. It was also quite sweet to see her daughters, Mia and Lena, looking so grown up, with Mia even stepping out in heels and a hat. Just a few steps away were Peter's cousins, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, arriving with their husbands. It has been wonderful to see how Beatrice has really refined her personal style recently. She also chose to rewear a piece from her closet, opting for a green-patterned Amelia Wickstead dress that she previously wore to Royal Ascot. She kept her jewelry very subtle, wearing a pair of small, delicate gold earrings shaped like little ribbon bows. Princess Eugenie, who is in the late stages of pregnancy, sensibly prioritized comfort in a classic navy blue coat, dress, and hat. But if you look closely at her jewelry, she added a very playful touch: 18-karat yellow gold and diamond baby elephant charm pendants by Anushka. It is always so nice to see the cousins coming together to support one another at these private family milestones, especially since they have been keeping a rather low profile recently. Some jewelry choices are so deeply personal that they simply become a signature. That is certainly the case for Lady Sarah Chatto. She arrived looking as elegant as always in a crisp black and white outfit, but it was her earrings that immediately drew my attention. She wore a stunning pair of large pearl drops suspended from a delicate V-shape of small diamonds. These earrings belonged to her late mother, Princess Margaret. They actually have a wonderfully documented history, tracing all the way back to the famous society hostess Mrs. Greville, who left them to the Queen Mother in 1942. Eventually, they made their way to Margaret, who wore them constantly from the late 1950s onward. I always find it so touching to see Sarah wearing them today because they instantly remind me of Princess Margaret. It is truly heartwarming that they managed to keep these modest, sentimental pieces safely within the family, especially when we remember how many of Margaret's iconic jewels were unfortunately put up for auction years ago. For Sarah, these pearls are tied to one of the most important milestones of her own life. Princess Margaret gave them to her as a gift in 1994, specifically so she could wear them on her own wedding day. Seeing her wear them to her nephew's wedding adds such a beautiful, quiet layer of family continuity. While Sarah leaned into classic, understated British heritage, the woman arriving alongside her brother, the Earl of Snowdon, brought a completely different kind of glamour to the churchyard. Isabelle de la Bruyere chose a blush pink outfit, paired with a striking set of statement earrings featuring large Baroque pearls and colored gemstones. It was a very polished, sophisticated look that felt distinctly European. Against the backdrop of traditional English tailored coats and sensible hats, she looked as though she had just stepped out of a summer reception at an old French chateau. Who knows? Perhaps Isabelle might be the next bride in this branch of the family, and we will get to admire a whole new set of beautiful jewels on her wedding day? We will just have to wait and see. For today, however, the spotlight firmly belonged to Harriet and Peter. Their wedding showed us that a modern royal bride can absolutely respect the history of her new family without needing a direct key to the Windsor vaults. By choosing the Pragnel tiara with its echoes of past coronations and its quiet connection to the late Queen's own jeweler, Harriet found a way to celebrate a new beginning on her own terms. I really loved the simplicity and sincerity of this wedding. There was no overwhelming pomp, just a lot of warmth, family support, and a careful, respectful approach to the little details. If this story felt as touching and fascinating to you as it did to me, please leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to hit the bell so we can open the jewelry boxes together for our next story. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. After all, jewels may be silent, but their stories are not. They won't go quiet as long as we keep telling them.